First of all, welcome everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody is having a wonderful day. Brief introduction. I am Adam Turski. I'm on the Trivisano team here at Keller Williams Living. Been licensed for about 3 years. First year was KW Living Rookie of the Year. Second year, let me backtrack. First year did about 3 million in volume my first year. Second year more than doubled my productivity from year one. And this year, about halfway through the year, I'd already met my productivity from last year. So on track to double that yet again.
Adam, are you primarily buyer heavy? Is that what your business is?
It used to be very buyer heavy.
Okay.
This year I have ended up going more through luck, skill, whatever it may be, toward like 60-40, more listing heavy than buyer heavy. But I love working with buyers. I know for some agents, it's kind of a sore subject. I love it. I love that process. I was a teacher for 13 years, high school English teacher, prior to transitioning to this full time. So that direct working with people, seeing their goals and dreams actualize and going through the process, that hits a very sweet spot. Sorry, that hits a very sweet spot for me emotionally, and I will never give up working with buyers.
I love that. Cool. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack for
No,
you.
no, you're okay. Okay, so like Danielle said, I do want to make this a little bit more conversational, especially with the changes going on that have gone into effect with NAR. Kind of go over what I do for a buyer consultation, and for those who are new to the industry, what a buyer consultation is and why it is so important. Let me. There we go. All right, I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, so everybody should be able to see this, correct? Awesome. So buyer consultations, what they are and why they're important. To me, the buyer consultation is where you set the tone for the relationship and the process moving forward. Why it is important is, everybody knows a real estate agent. Everybody knows somebody who knows a real estate agent. So for us, this is our first opportunity to really get in there with people and show them our value and how we operate and why we are the best at what we do. This is where your personality shines. This is where your ability to present who you are and why you are the best choice is important. More so when we move into the fact with these NAR changes, this is important because this lays the groundwork for, not only what your job and your goal is as their agent representing them, but this is how you have that discussion about the changes and how you get paid and what is now happening. So every buyer consult that I go to, first things that I do, I want to sit down with them, and everybody's probably familiar with some version of like an LP Mama script. I like to go over these things to kind of get a feel for what they're doing, focusing on their location, zeroing in on the property location, surrounding locations, narrowing down the search area, figuring out their price point. What is their ideal price range? Big one is their motivation. This is going to be something that you are constantly going to reference throughout the process as you're working with them to help keep things moving along, and when you hit peaks and valleys, to keep things on track. But it's determining their need, their intent, sense of urgency. Are they expecting an addition to the family? Do they need to expand? Are they relocating for a job? What type of timeline constraints does that put on them for closing on a home? Agent, I've actually shifted the agent portion to the beginning in like pre-qualification on a phone conversation as to, are they already working with an agent? Now that it is required that everybody has a buyer representation agreement signed, depending on how specific their buyer rep agreement is with another agent, um, there could be a lot of stepping on toes going on if you just openly start working with somebody and nobody likes litigation. Oh, sorry. There we go. Um, Mortgage, this is where I like to, you discuss, have they been pre-approved? Are they currently working with a lender? Do they need any sort of uh referral to any lenders? We give them 3+, 3 minimum, referrals to any sort of, lenders to work on pre-approval, people that they can shop rates with. Is it a cash purchase? And then it's setting the appointment, getting that, whether it's for the first showing or if you're able to do this on the phone with them, it's setting the appointment to be able to actually do the real estate things. So the way that this conversation tends to go is, you sit down, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. Um, when we get started, while we get started, please, tell me a little bit about what you're looking at. When, if they reached out about, I want to buy a house in Solon. Tell me about what draws you to Solon. You want to ask a lot of open-ended questions. You don't want to say, are you looking at other areas? Yes. What other areas? So what areas, what are some other areas besides Solon that you're interested in? Price point, finding out, do they need to sell in order to buy? Do, are there any other factors involved? I spend a lot of time on the motivation aspect because this is where we really get to feel who they are as a person, who they are as a buyer, what they're looking for, and what is important to them. So when we're going through this, it's all open-ended questions, guiding the conversation where possible. Open-ended questions being things that are not answered with a yes or no answer. So we want to focus on like who, what, when, why, where, how type questions. Guide them with tell me about, tell me more. So for example, if they say we're looking for something with more space than what we have, tell me about the place you currently live. Tell me about what you don't like about that space. Tell me more about what type of space you're looking for. Get them talking. This kind of goes into the whole, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen to the customer to make them a client. Listen to their concerns, their questions, their needs, the things that they don't like. And just keep the conversation organic. Tell me more about what you're looking for. Center the conversation around them. By making things about them, about their needs, you are indirectly putting yourself in a position of helpfulness in the sense of, oftentimes we want to sell ourselves. Why am I the best agent for you? This is what I do. This is the largest financial decision that buyers are going to make in their life. Listening to them, being empathetic to their needs, to what their situation is going to sell you much better than probably anything you can tell them about what you do. This is an industry of relationships. It's a people industry. Um, be personable. Have the conversations. Don't preach to them. So questions to guide the conversation. We kind of touched on this about location. Tell me about where you're looking at. Tell me more about what you prefer. Motivations and price, the price conversation is pretty straightforward. You can ask them about, do they have a price point in mind? Where would they ideally like to be? Um, highs and lows, know the markets that you're showing, know the markets that you're working in. Because if somebody comes around and says, I'm looking for $150,000 colonial in Solon, it's got to have 4 bedroom, 3 bath. Obviously you want to be able to know that you're probably not going to find that. Uh, Once we've gotten into that motivation, I like to focus on what I call my buyer's top 5. This is their buy box. What are their must haves? The top 5 are the must haves, the things that are, if this house does not have it, I don't want it. This is what we use to keep them focused, to keep them motivated. Um, when you go through a home, you're going to have buyers that maybe want to look at something that doesn't meet their buy box, but referring back to that top 5 becomes important for keeping motivation and spirits high with, a home doesn't have something in your top 5. Is this now something that you're negotiable on, or is it something that is still a must have for you? Finding out things that are like there would be nice. These are things that are great to have, but it's not a deal breaker. They're open to looking at homes that don't have these features, but if they do, great. And then I like to focus on the non-starters as well. These are the things that are just absolutely, if this home has this, I don't want to look. You could have people that don't want things like basement laundry. They need first floor laundry. Or if they're looking at a colonial or 2-story home, they want their laundry room up on the floor with all of the bedrooms. If it doesn't exist, they don't want it. Focusing on these non-starters is important to me in the buyer consult, because it's not just about what you want, it's about the things that you don't want. If they're moving for a reason. If they're selling a home just to move into something new, there's stuff about their home that they might not like. So we don't want to put them in a situation where they're also dealing with those features. Things that I find most often are non-starters, or if the buyer is having issues coming up with things, asking about corner lots, proximity to, or whether they are sitting on a main road, proximity to railroad tracks, um, you know, things that may come across as either obtrusive in a sense of there's too much traffic, too much noise. Maybe they tell you that they want a nice backyard. It might be something to bring up that, so I'm assuming corner lots are probably off the table, because they're going to be dealing more with like front yard, side yard in most situations, not a backyard. Um, so getting a feel for what their must-haves, would be nices, and non-starters are is how I guide that conversation. I do like to go over with everybody in a buyer consult a buyer power checklist. These are things that, as we get into the discussion about the process of buying a home, putting in offers, these are things that can make your offer more appealing. We have the discussion about price as it relates to the current markets, the trends that we see, knowing as we move into these NAR changes, that if it's something where you are going to be asking for concessions, knowing that you may need to reflect that in the price. Going over things like appraisal gaps, what they are, how do they apply to making an offer more powerful or not. what they are comfortable with, but making them fully aware of what it is. Price escalations, going over different options for home inspections. Are they getting every inspection under the sun? Pros and cons of that. Home inspections for educational purpose and waivers. Earnest money, the amount of earnest money they put down. Are they guaranteeing earnest money to solidify the strength of their contract and saying, unless if we, other than structural deficiency during an inspection, we forego any earnest money if we back out of the contract, to make it like, look, we're all in. We are sold on this house. We are willing to stake everything, barring structural deficiency, saying that we're going to get this to the finish line. Are they offering or willing to offer any sort of delayed possession to give the seller more time to move? And there's a bunch of other things that we can do to make creative offers, but it's making sure that the buyers at least have an idea of what options are available, so that when it comes to that offer writing process, we're, especially in the market the last few years, we're dealing with properties that, you have a deadline. You might not see or be able to get into the property until, Monday morning, Monday afternoon, but there's a 5 p.m. deadline. You don't want to be having this conversation about explaining everything when you're under the gun to get an offer written. So having this in your back pocket of, this is what I know they're informed about and what they're comfortable with, can help move things along. And it takes a lot of the pressure when it's, down to that, okay, let's write the offer. And you're not asking them a million questions to try and overwhelming them. I go over the process. This is what we use on the Triv team as part of what does it look like buying a home. Once we have, not just looking at homes, but once we found the home that you like, explaining to them the process from the offer to closing, making an offer, negotiating the terms of the offer. Once our offer is accepted, what steps do they need to make? Moving into the inspections and appraisal, waiting for title and the lender to get things done on their end, and then the signing, and then title gets recorded, you get the keys. I've run into with buyer consults, a lot of people say, yeah, it takes like 30 days. Sure. Could take 45. If maybe they've done like all of their due diligence, they've been pre-underwritten, they're ready to go. Their lender is like, yeah, we can get this closed in 21 days. I like to still go over what this process looks like, because there's a lot of different factors in there. Your lender might have said you can close in 21, but what if we get to step 2 for negotiation of terms and the seller needs more time? It's just preparing them for what that process looks like, as opposed to handling it as it comes. Explaining to them, okay, we've seen this home, let's write an offer. Let me explain to you how the offer works. Coming from the beginning with the knowledge of the process makes for a much smoother working relationship and a much smoother transaction. And I always love to end, and have to end, all of my buyer consultations with the required documents. At the end of any buyer consultation, always end with a presentation of the Consumer's Guide to Agency Relationships, and especially now, your buyer representation agreement. The former is required by law before engaging in any real estate act. So we want to make sure that we are going over what the Consumer's Guide is, what it explains, the protections that it gives and explains to the buyer, and having them sign that so that we can set them up on a search, start looking at homes, get out there, write offers, and also as a CYA, to where if something goes wrong and there's an audit on the transaction, you have done your part to have that signed before anything else takes place. And then the buyer representation agreement, which is now required. It's a non-negotiable for us. Before stepping foot in any home with a buyer, we need to have this buyer representation agreement signed. So ending with the explanation of a buyer's representation being the document that shows what we are specifically helping you with, how we as an agent get paid, and then going into the different details of how that compensation may or may not come about, which is a completely different conversation. Uh, it's having that in place and making sure that they understand that you cannot show them any homes without a buyer representation agreement. And I've run into it, especially I've been doing buyer rep agreements on every buyer that I've worked with. Pretty much since we got news that like this NAR stuff was, this is happening, this is what it's going to require. So probably for the last 6 months or so, every buyer that I've worked with has had a buyer rep agreement. And the biggest objection that I get is, yeah, that's great. Like, yeah, everything you said here sounds wonderful, but like, I'm not comfortable engaging in like a contract to commit to working with you. Like, I still don't know you as an agent. Like, everything sounds great, but um, and to me, the easiest way to handle that objection is I totally understand. I'm not the type of person that would also want to just jump into a long-term contract with somebody that, maybe they're just a smooth talker, but once we get inside a house, they don't know what's up and what's down. So what we can do is, you said you want to see house ABC. Why don't I write in here these specific homes? And we can go ahead and sign so I can get you to these homes to show them to you. And at the end of those showings, when we come to the agreement that we're going to continue working together, we can amend the document and get a more broad representation agreement for finding that single family home, condo, investment property. Does that sound good? And it puts their mind at ease that they understand the process, that you need to have it signed to see something, but it's not a commitment right off rip to work with you, in perpetuity. You are offering them a trial experience, and from my experience, once they get into the home with you and see your expertise, the way that you show a home, the level of care and attention that you're giving, it becomes a lot easier at the end to, either pull out an amended version of that contract, of that buyer representation agreement, or, send one over to extend that relationship. But with it being required at the beginning, before showing any homes now, we've got to make sure that we're telling them that it's a non-negotiable, but we're not setting it in stone that this is a forever thing. And I think by what I've found is by presenting it as we can do this as a temporary for these homes. And then once we are done with those, when we, come to the agreement that we're going to continue working together, we can amend that afterward. It puts their mind at ease that this is not a high pressure situation, that you understand and empathize with the position that they're in, and you're not coming across as strong arming a relationship, which can come across as you trying to do everything for your benefit. Yeah, that is
Adam, I have a question.
Sure.
So in your experience over the last, few weeks, as all the things are happening and you're getting buyer agencies, have you submitted any of, I'm probably going to say the document the wrong way, but have you submitted any offers with the compensation as well? And what does that conversation look like with your buyers?
So I have not submitted any offers with that buyer, that like cooperative one.
Yeah.
But I have had a lot of conversations with, cooperating agents about that process. Starting out the conversation with, are you offering a commission? There's a whole gamut of answers that we're getting right now, from yes to no to just submit an offer and we'll let you know based on the offer. Um, I have gone through the process with buyers as to what it looks like. And the big thing is to me is understanding that, like, when we explain to buyers that we can ask for concessions, that we're explaining that like the concessions are basically, the seller paying part of your closing costs, and then instead of you taking money out of your pocket for closing costs, that money is basically what's paying me,
Mhm,
because from a legal standpoint, concessions have to benefit the buyer, not us.
mhm.
Um, and I haven't had any pushback yet.
Okay.
Um, I'm hoping that, in my showings that I'm doing, that I've got scheduled for this week, that we will be submitting offers and having those detailed conversations. But I think it all comes down to explaining to the buyer in that consultation what it means, and, like, not just sitting there and saying, like, yeah, and my fee is 3%, or my fee is 2%, or whatever your fee is, and having them go, great, so I need to bring an extra $15,000 to the table on this $500,000 purchase. Like, explaining to them that while on the surface it seems like this is a drastic change and now the buyers need to bring more money to the table, the reality of it is this has always been the case, where buyers may have been responsible for all or some of their agent's fee. And as always, my goal is to have as much of that covered through seller concessions or seller offered commission to reduce your out of pocket expenses. And then having that hard conversation of, in the event that we can't get that done, I'm sure you don't like working for free. I don't either. Having that hard conversation about what is our plan moving forward. If there is no way to come to an agreement on concessions to reduce your out of pocket for closing costs, or no seller paid commissions, are we just abandoning ship, or where does it go from there? And it's a difficult conversation, but I think having that conversation up front is very important.
Yeah. I think what I liked that you said, and I will open it up for a second to see if anybody has questions, but I was just listening to something, Phil Jones was at Mega Camp and talked for about 20 minutes, and he said something. I understand that we have a list out there of the 100 things that we do as a buyer's agent, right? And I understand that we sometimes pass that along and slide that across the table. And basically what he said is, when you do that, you're just validating what you're worth. And you shouldn't have to validate what you're worth. You should have people believe what you're worth, because then what they start doing is they start saying, well, Adam, I don't need this, so do I get to pay you less? Or I don't need these services, or I already have this person. So I like what you said, that you ask great questions and you find out what they want and what the motivation is. And then you never have to slide that document across that says, here's the 100 things that we do for you. You just do the things that they need for you. And by doing that, it validates your value to them. So I love that and I appreciate that. And if anybody's using that document, that's okay. You don't have to stop doing it. But I do think when Phil Jones said that, and if you don't have the link for that video, shoot me a message. I'll get it to you. It does make you think a little bit differently about these conversations now. So I did love that.
100%. Yeah, I think it's one of those, like, anytime you put a large list in front of people of this is what I do, they're going to scrutinize that list and they're going to go, oh, well, I don't really need somebody to do that. Or
Mhm.
what's the likelihood we're going to need this? And you end up devaluing yourself by presenting this. Whereas if it's just organic and conversational, like I said, it's an industry of people, it's an industry of relationships.
Yeah.
That goes a lot further.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Okay, anybody in the Zoom room have any questions for Adam? Cool. All right, well, we appreciate you. Adam, thanks for putting that together. Thanks for chatting that through us. We'll get the playbook out sometime tomorrow, hopefully. And if you guys need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. We've got a class on Thursday, little plug on fiduciary versus functionary agent. We're going to talk through some of these things. We're going to talk through what it means to be a fiduciary agent versus a functionary agent and why that matters right now. It's our K1. It's an hour long. It's at 2 p.m. And all of the classes that we're doing right now are really to just continue to add value around all the changes. And so you guys can pick one or two things apart from all of them and implement them in your business. So thank you guys for being here. Adam, we so appreciate you, and we'll see you guys soon. See ya.
Thank you for having me.